If you want to move some data from A to B or process some data, of course, you need some compute capabilities. And this is what an integration runtime does for you. Let's take a look at the documentation very briefly to see what runtime types are actually available. And we have 3 of those. It's called Azure, self-hosted, and Azure SSIS. So here we can see in that table whether or not it depends public network or private link. But the key question is, okay, when to use what? When do I use Azure-based integration runtime? When to use self-hosted integration runtime? When to use SSIS integration runtime? So let me give you a brief answer to that particular question. It depends on the actual question whether or not you want to use SSIS. If you want to do it, use it. If you don't, ask yourself a question. Do you want to self-host the integration runtime to keep the data private going in or going out or being processed? If this is the case, use the self-hosted version. And if it's not the case, or if you want to use a Microsoft data flow, which requires the Azure-based integration runtime, use the Azure-based integration runtime. It's that simple. Now that we're back on the ADF UI, let me show you where to find the configuration for integrated runtimes already existing. Here we have the default Azure-hosted one called Auto Resolve Integration Runtime. Here you can take a look at the JSON-based declaration or metadata of this default integration runtime. You can also dive into the monitoring details, like let's see what's happening here in terms of activities, and you can see the pipeline and actual activities being performed by that integration runtime. So now let me show you how to create a new integration runtime. Here we have the SSIS option, and here we have the self-hosted option if you want that. And let's say I want to come up with a hybrid scenario. I want to read some data from the on-premises world. So it really makes sense to do that with a self-hosted integration runtime. So let's give this a name and hit create, and then getting a wizard and a description how to set up this integration runtime and connect it to my private environment, also known as my on-premises infrastructure. Therefore, I need to download and install some sources. Here is the appropriate hyperlink, and here I have the authentication key that has to be used to come up with the connection between Azure and my local system.